Welcome to Jordan. If you're joining me for the first time, hi, I'm Caroline, and so far this series I've checked into a Dead Sea resort complex to try out its facilities, spa, buffet food, but most importantly, get mudded up and float around in the Dead Sea. I've also experienced what Petra has to offer its visitors once the sun goes down. Today, we'll be driving to the outskirts of the Dana Biosphere Reserve to hike on our own with no guide along the Wadi Ghuweir trail, making the day's activity virtually free. Good morning and welcome to Wadi Ghuweir. The Wadi is approximately 1 hour's drive north of Petra, and we've come here today to do a there and back hike into this canyon. We'll kind of see how it goes, but we're expecting to get about 6 kilometres in before we turn around and head back to where we've parked the car. It's just really nice getting a little bit of respite from the sun today, being stuck down inside of this Wadi. We've probably been walking for about half an hour from the car park to this section where it's now starting to narrow, but up until this point it's very much been exposed in the sun and it's been much wider. It has also meant that a lot of the time we've been going off in one direction and then we've got to a dead end because there's just too much of a big drop to get down, so we've had to go back and choose other pathways. We have had one couple passes who has obviously a local guide with them, and they just flew on by, and we felt a little bit cheeky trying to keep up pace with them because naturally we've not paid for the guide. So I think if you were doing it with a local, you could do this much faster to get to this point of where you've got a little bit of respite from the shade. But I mean, it's still quite early in the morning at the moment, but I am very grateful for the fact that we are now about to go into a little bit more coolness from the shade of the canyon walls. A total of 2 larger groups, probably of about 10 people, and then one smaller group that was just a couple who've passed us going through this canyon with a guide. Each time they've come a little bit closer and then they've headed off, I think just all of the chattering, it echoes right throughout the walls, but then we've held back, we've allowed them to go on by, and if you just listen, there's just nothing. There's been like the odd tweeting of birds as they've passed over above the Wadi, and obviously there's the crunching of the stones underneath our shoes, but other than that, you just can't hear anything down here. It's eerily quiet. Slippery. And my leg doesn't quite reach. Okay. I'm just gonna go for it. My research online told me that there's a point of no return where if you jump down a big enough drop, you can't come back up and you're forced to have to go all the way to the end of the trail and then by transport to take you back to where the trailhead started. Now what I saw online was waterfall and that people were like jumping into a pool of water. But I don't know what time of year that was. We're right at the very end of October, it's almost November now. So I don't know if this is it, but it's just been dried up because I'm really not too sure. I'm saying I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure how I would get back up from this point. I think I might scout around a little bit and see if there's another way down that's a bit more step friendly, but I wouldn't have thought that we would have got to that point of having to turn back yet. It doesn't seem like we've been walking for long enough, but we'll keep scouting. Yeah, I just went around the side of that rock and then there's a big bit of spray paint in the wall saying, don't jump down there, there's some ladders this way, so there's definitely ways around. And you've just had a moth or a butterfly land on you. I thought that was normally me, they hitchhiked on me, but this one's definitely on you. That was easier than I was expecting it to be. They were actually really well placed. Okay, that's really sturdy though. Yeah. So Andy went first and he said this is not easy. I said okay, well let's show it. Oh my word. Can you put your foot on that or will it slide?
I don't know, give it a try.
It seems to just about be holding. I don't know if I trust trainers. The trail is full of boulders and lots of really small stones and it's just making it not the most pleasant on my feet. So I'm just going to put some really thick woolen hiking socks over my regular ones, which I really didn't want to have to do that because even though we're hiking in a wadi, which is keeping us cooler, it's still very hot in here. I can just see this making me probably even hotter. But I'd rather be a little bit overheated rather than blistery because tomorrow we've got a lot more hiking ahead of us because we're planning on doing the 800 steps up to the monastery in Petra tomorrow. But whilst I'm doing this, I'll talk a little bit more about this hike. So the resort hotel that we were staying at by the Dead Sea, because it obviously had its own beautifully manicured gardens by the staff who worked there, there was a lot of birds that were visiting those gardens, but I'd say that the wildlife kind of started and ended there, whereas here we've seen a lot more wildlife, such as they're either centipedes or millipedes. I'm not too sure which of the two they are. My research ahead of coming here today did tell me that they're not poisonous, so you don't need to worry too much about those. And if you want to try and find them, because we're seeing a lot of them dead on the footpath, we're not too sure why that's the case. I don't know if they just sort of die at this time of year or if something's happened, but we have found a few alive ones and I saw loads of them right down underneath the, I suppose the canyon wall crevice where it sort of met the floor, and almost looked like a nest of them in there. We've also seen lizards and either, again, moths or butterflies. I'm not too sure which of the two it is. And as I've talked about, you know, the tweeting of the birds as they're flying above, and The deeper in that we're going, the more greenery there seems to be, and the river just kind of appears and then disappears and then comes back again. And I think every time we get to that running water, the greenery starts to pop up again. But given the arid land that we drove through in order to get to the trailhead, you never would have thought that something as lush and as green as this was down here. So it's a wonderful surprise to get into here and find it. One thing that my research told me over and over again was don't come to this hike if there is any chance of there being a flash flood, because if there is, it's almost uncertain death. And coming all the way through the canyon, you're seeing all of these rivets in the cliff face where you can see boulders. And when I say boulders, I'm talking like maybe this big, where the torrent of the water that's obviously come gushing down here has managed to shift those and then lodge them into those crevices. And then we come across this, and you have to ask yourself, what kind of flash flood is able to shift something of that size, carry it down the canyon, and for it to get lodged that high up? Because that's not Mother Nature. Mother Nature has not carved that through rain. That has to have been a boulder that was much further upstream at some point. And yeah, flash flood. If a flash flood can shift that, there's absolutely no way humans are going to be able to survive it. It's crazy. This trail just changes the further down that you get. I'd say the temperature has dropped even more so, and we've got into a point where there's a lot more water. You can see it and hear it percolating off of the rocks into the canyon. And it's opened out to these almost hanging gardens, which is just stunning. But this canyon, or this wadi even is the correct terminology for it, it's just surprising me, like with every twist and turn and every bit further down that we go. It's a true adventure down here. We have come into what can only best be described as this little oasis right here in the desert, but down in this Wadi Ghuweir canyon, and it's just beautiful. The green just contrasts so nicely against the orange of the canyon walls, and you've got all of the trickling water, and you've got the little tumbling waterfalls, and the wildlife around this area as well has picked up quite significantly too. Now that we've come into the oasis of the Wadi Ghuweir, it's starting to get a little bit more challenging to try and keep our feet dry. I have packed in my backpack a pair of water shoes, so I figured that if it starts to get really bad, I can change into those. So far it has been okay, just hopping from boulder to boulder, or there's been parts where the gravel's been, I guess, like bunched up a little bit to create almost like islands that, yes, they are wet, but it's fine to still hike with your hiking shoes in. But I'm just eager not to get them absolutely soaked, because trying to hike in this kind of terrain with wet socks and wet shoes is just a recipe for blisters. So if you're planning on doing this hike, I would perhaps recommend doing the same and just packing a pair of water shoes just in case, because it depends on how much it's rained recently as to how much water will be flowing throughout this canyon. Seems like a bigger jump than it actually is.
Yeah.
Which one's my stronger leg? Probably not this one, but I need... Yes! It's half midday, so we've decided that this is just as far as what we're going to get. I know that where that waterfall is the maximum that you can go if you're wanting to do it is there and back, but everything that I read online said that you didn't actually have to go that far. You can just choose to turn around whenever it is that you would like to do so. Our thinking process is that obviously we've been going downhill the whole way, so naturally to get back to the car is going to be, it's going to be gradual, but it is going to be uphill all the way back. And then we've got the drive back to Petra, which is going to take an extra hour on top. So we're going to turn back and try and scout out somewhere that's a little bit on the drier side so that we can stop off and have some lunch, because my tummy is definitely letting me know that I'm hungry right now. Just finished up with our lunch. In fairness, it was quite basic. I went along to a bakery this morning. The bakery itself was fascinating. There were lots of traditional Arabic sweets, so I picked up a tray of those for breakfast because our breakfast isn't included in the hotel that we're staying at, and in my opinion, I felt like the breakfast in the hotel was really expensive and I just couldn't justify spending that much money. So we picked up the Arabic sweets for breakfast. And then for lunch, I kid you not when I say, the bread was falling from the ceiling. So there were two gentlemen who were just standing at this counter and just waiting for the flatbreads just to fall from the ceiling, and then they started packing them up into bags. So I picked up a bag of really nice wholemeal flatbread and then popped to what they call like a supermarket a couple of doors up, but it was more like a corner shop, and the gentleman inside of there was incredibly helpful, incredibly welcoming. In fact, in fairness, the guys in the bakery were incredibly welcoming as well. And I ended up picking up a huge pot of hummus, so it's just been a case of some hummus and flatbread for lunch, along with a Mars bar that I might have swiped out of the mini bar from our hotel room. So it's hopefully just giving me enough energy to be able to get back out, but I'm quite eager to have a little bit of fruit or some vegetables, either as a mid-afternoon snack when we get out of here, or particularly with dinner tonight. I'm going to be keeping a eagle eye out for something that's a little bit more healthy than what I've just gone and consumed for lunch. One of the downsides of this hike is that unfortunately there is an incredible amount of litter strewn throughout. I'd say that it was worse up at the top, but I do wonder if that's just because when the winter rains come and you've got any kind of flash floods that happen, that litter isn't being pushed downstream. But obviously once you get into the actual wadi itself, because of the closed up canyon walls, it means that the water's pushed away a lot more of the litter. The other thing that hasn't been so nice has been the graffiti on a lot of the rocks. I've seen both graffiti in Arabic writing, but also in the Latin alphabet. And I think it's the Latin alphabet that's particularly got me, because that says to me that it's tourists, it's visitors, people who are guests in this country. And for some reason, that is how they seem to think that it is appropriate to say thank you for being allowed to come and visit this country and visit this space. Two slight downsides, but I think it's worth mentioning, just in case you are planning on coming here. Please, do make sure that you follow that concept of pack in, pack out. So if you pack in some food or some drinks, just take the empty litter home with you or back to your hotel and bin it. And just don't bring a can of spray paint to, spray the canyon walls, because that's just a weird thing to pack for your holidays. Whoa. You need something to hold on to. it's tricky.